Welcome to my office and my cozy little space here where I'm going to get to talk to you about some very important issues in the presidential election. We have just a few weeks left, and now is the time to say no to fear, say yes to faith, and avoid failure. We're going to get right into what's going on in our country, and I'm definitely burdened before this election to talk to you very directly about the choice that is before us. I've watched the presidential debate, the vice presidential debate, and who knows if we're going to have any more of these debates. I also, like I say, often am trying to watch both the left and the right-leaning media and trying to make sense of it and help you make sense of what you're actually seeing. But here's how I see the choice playing out. We're really being faced with a decision about fear, faith, or failure. And let me elaborate a little bit on each one of those. What I see coming from the left, what I see coming from the Biden and the Harris ticket is raising up as much fear as possible. They're talking about how bad the coronavirus is, how bad the economy has gotten, how bad race relations are, how bad America has fallen in the global sight, how bad things are and things are going and things are going to be unless you put them in power. Now, some of this is typical. This happens almost every election season. You have to knock down your opponent. You have to kind of say, life is not good. Are you better off 4 years ago? Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? I understand that. But so much of what they're saying is not based on good facts or is eliminating the 3 years of really good that took place under the Trump-Pence administration. But it's all been trashed in these past 6, 7, 8 months because of the coronavirus and the slowdown in the economy and then the fomenting racial tensions and all these other kinds of things. So, guys, you have to understand that the fear is being trumped up, it's being exploited, it's being amplified, and the leftist media couldn't be any happier to do the bidding of these folks who want this to take place. So I need to question what's the root of the fear and how realistic and how complete is the picture. That's the last thing anyone on that side wants you to do. They don't want you to look at the facts. They want to put you in fear. They don't want you to look at how most Americans were very happy until about 8, 9 months ago with how the president was doing and the momentum in the economy. I mean, the economic growth was off the charts, and the jobless rate, and even increasing wealth for African Americans, for low-income folks and working-class folks. And the president brought a new factory into the city of Detroit, which had not happened since the 90s, which was under Bill Clinton, but nothing came in under Bush or Obama. 16 years. And actually, I think that last factory that opened in the city of Detroit was like 1993 or something like that, maybe 96, but we're talking 20, 25 years approximately. And yet under Trump and his economic leadership, a major auto manufacturer said, we're going to open a factory in the city limits of Detroit, which has been decimated. It's all over the news. The city of Detroit has lost well over half of its population in the city limits. Many of them have just moved out to the suburbs. But the city's been devastated, ravaged. And it's a heavily liberal, heavily African-American city. And yet here is Trump, under his leadership, convinced the leader of one of these auto companies to open a factory in the city limits, which has a much greater chance then of employing city residents of Detroit. Working class people, union members, American Auto Workers Union, African Americans, minorities, the people that the left claims Trump doesn't like and doesn't care about. That's just not true. And his record proves it out. So even up until about maybe 2 months ago, I think it was only 6, 7 weeks ago, that Michael Moore, a very left, very liberal filmmaker, said, guys, warning, Trump is going to steamroll to another victory because there just isn't the enthusiasm on the Biden side. He's not drawing people out to vote. People aren't just Joe Biden heroes. They don't just love him. People chant, I love you, at Trump's rallies. People absolutely love who he is and what he stands for. Now, another thing that I saw, so you have to look at the whole record. And how bad did things get? How quickly did they get? But is that really reflective of who Trump is, how he's governed, how America is, where America's going, where she was going, and where she will go? The Trump campaign talks about the V-shaped recovery. There was a quick slide down, and they're looking for a quick rocket up. Now, here's the other factor about fear I want to talk about, and that had to do with things like the Green New Deal, or of course, Kamala Harris would say, oh, no, no, that's not what we're doing. But basically, the plan that's on the Biden-Harris website is super similar. And whether it's the exact same plan or not, you have to understand the fundamental difference in the way the left thinks about the economy, about economic growth, about choosing winners and losers. This is what I'm going to get into right here. Basically, the left wants a controlled economy. The left wants the government to pick the winners and the losers, the government to give out grants, the government to create jobs. And guys, this always sounds like the greatest promise, the greatest plan. It sounds like the greatest idea ever. I remember I was in ninth grade and we were having a political discussion about like politics and the differences in America in one of my high school English classes. And the teacher asked me that day, he said, can you describe kind of how the liberals think about things and kind of what their mindset is? And I said, well, the liberals want to give all of our money away. They want to, create job programs and work programs and this programs, and they want to kind of, create this kind of perfect society and have all these programs to do all these things. And when I got done sharing that, this girl in class raised up her hand. She's like, well, what's wrong with that? You know what my answer was? It just doesn't work that way. It just doesn't work that way. It always sounds so good on paper. On paper, communism and even socialism, which is basically just the forerunner of it, look perfect. What could be wrong with this? We make sure everyone has enough and everyone has a job and there's full employment and, the government just, makes sure we produce enough of this and that. It sounds wonderful. People leave communist and socialist countries every day in droves, and those who are stuck there, so many of them are trying to get out. And so many who have gotten out will tell you, it's not the way. It's not the answer. America, why are you doing this? And yet, if you don't know your history, I talk about that, the Berlin Wall, people jumping over the wall and hiding out under it and doing everything to get out of a socialist Germany to the free side of it. Here we have people wanting communism and socialism to come into this country. The planned economy, the top-down controlled economy, that was the Soviet Union. That was the Eastern Bloc. That's so many other nations. Venezuela has been wrecked by socialism. It was a wealthy petroleum-producing country, and now it's in horrible shape. I know people who live there. It's not good. They don't like it. They want to get out. They're unhappy. Guys, we don't need this here. But you have to actually think about what you're saying. It sounds so attractive. Even under Obama, it was, we're going to do all this solar energy and alternative energy. It's the same story. It's just been revamped now. And I remember there was this video of him visiting this solar plant. I believe it was in California. And the government gave them large amounts of money. I mean, it may have been tens or even hundreds of millions of dollars. I don't have the exact figures in front of me. But Obama's touring them like, yes, this is a portrait of, the future of energy and the economy and green jobs and all that same rhetoric you're hearing now. And I don't know if it was 6 months or a year, 2 years later, that company was out of business. Took the money and run. Did not produce the jobs or did not produce lasting economic growth. The government has proven time and time again they are not the answer. And yet they're preying on the fears of young people in particular. Kamala Harris said, oh, imagine, you're 20 and you get out of college, there's no jobs, and we have a 20-something-year-old in our family, and oh, it's so hard. The government will come in and help you. The government will be your friend. The government will provide a job. And they're using the environment. This is the way. And it aligns perfectly with the climate change accords and the climate deals, which is forcing by the will of governments and worldwide standards, forcing change to the economy, forcing change. And irrespective of small businesses, irrespective of personal liberty, you will change or else you'll be kicked out of the world community or there's government sanctions. Guys, this is fear. It's fear-based. It's fear about the environment, fear about the economy, fear about not having a job. And people are willing to give up their freedom simply because they're afraid. Don't buy into it. Don't buy into it, guys. That's just not the way it goes. Mike Pence brought up very nicely in the vice presidential debate that simply through private industry growing, wealth is increased, average of $2,000 for lower income people, have about $2,000 more than they had before 3.5 years ago under Obama. And the environmental emissions have actually gone down, but not through the hand of government forcing it, but through legitimate growth in the economy, not the government picking winners and losers, not the government forcing things, but the government allowing the free market to do what it's made to do, create jobs, seek opportunities, employ people. The free market pulls people out of poverty, not government programs. They've proven that time and time again. Another way I see the left using fear is kind of trying to knock President Trump's standing as a politician. He's never run as a politician. He's never run as just a normal politician. He didn't hold elective office before this. But he got elected because he understands America, and he's super pro-American. I drove by a sign today, and it actually was appalling to me. It said, there were two boxes, and it was like Trump, or it said like America, and like a checkbox, or Trump, and checkbox. And of course, they're checking, America and like crossing out Trump. Guys, nothing could be further from the truth. Donald Trump is one of the most pro-American presidents in recent history. And nothing is further from the truth that he is anti-American or no, he's against people's distorted view of America. He's against their idealistic, liberal, paradise, utopian view of what they want America to become. But rest assured, this is nothing like what the Founding Fathers envisioned. They envisioned something much closer to Trump's America. Free markets, freedom to rise up. And yes, I understand back when America was founded, there was slavery. It's since been banned. And even some of the founders who had slavery, remember, most of the world had slavery at the time of the founding of the United States. Even many of the founders who endorsed it were still conflicted by it. Like, yeah, I have this and okay, but man, I kind of wish it would go away. Or, oh, you know what, I have it. Yeah, it's part of life, but I'm going to free my slaves when I die. Or, and I'm not pleased. I'm not condoning. I hate it. I'm so glad it's gone. But you need to understand the world was a different place 250 years ago. But America is a story of continually developing and increasing and spreading those freedoms. And I've brought it up before, but nearly 40% or approximately 40% of African Americans in this country are middle class. They've climbed out of poverty. They're middle class. They have lives that, are sort of typical of what we might call the American dream. And yes, there are problems with police violence. There are way higher rates of incarceration. And, certainly you can look at some judicial system things. We do need reform in this country. But do we need to wreck everything? That's actually kind of poo-pooing the people that have gotten ahead, that have pulled themselves up, that have worked through the system, even whatever systematic injustice or problems exist. You're actually saying, it's not possible to do what you just did, but yet 40% of African Americans have achieved middle-class life. And as I brought it up before, how many have served in Congress, served in Senate, and even now served in the presidency? And yet we're being told America is the most hopelessly racist, evil, wicked, broken nation, needs radical change, radical help, radical surgery, and that's just not the case. You're being fed fear. It's being exploited, thrown in your face. The last thing these people want is facts. So take a breath and just consider for a minute if any of this has hit home with you. Is anything that I'm saying anything different than what you've heard? Or even causing you to consider what you've seen and what you've heard in anything of a different light? I'm not arguing about what's been said. I'm arguing the facts and the viewpoints. And another thing that I saw Kamala Harris do so well was speak with emotion about, imagine you're a poor person or an African American person or a young person. So appealing to people. And I know that she cares. I absolutely know that she does. But I don't agree with her solutions and her facts and the things that she's promising. I don't believe they're going to pan out, and neither should you. And then Mike Pence, I actually know that he cares as well. And this is the difference. Trump and Pence, or Trump is not a seasoned politician. Pence is a politician, but he sides very heavily with Trump. Trump proves that he cares not as much by what he says, but by what he does. His actions have actually produced jobs. His actions have actually unleashed the economy and built economic growth, and the stock market continues to do well. His actions have actually increased the standing of America. His actions have actually righted a lot of the wrongs and will continue to, I believe, in the next term. And so maybe Mike Pence will get knocked because he didn't seem as caring, he didn't seem as loving, he didn't seem as sympathetic, maybe as Kamala Harris. But I guarantee you his policies will actually help more people, including you if you're in any of those groups. will actually allow you to rise up and achieve your destiny in a greater way instead of limiting it and putting it under government control and government restriction. The liberals on the left side are masters at knowing how to appeal and to manipulate. Here's how we get the young vote, we do this. Here's how we get the black vote, we do this. Here's how we get the Hispanic vote. I mean, they're masters at this. I remember years ago, and I don't know if they still do this, this was probably early to mid-90s, the Democratic National Convention, they made a point of saying, we are going to make sure that the people in the room are an exact representation of America. So if America is, 30% Hispanic, it's not, I'm throwing out numbers, they're going to make sure that 30% of the people in the room are Hispanic. And if America is, 12% black, we're going to have 12% black and 8% Asian. I mean, they made sure that their room looked like a representation of America. Now, in and of itself, that's not a bad thing. But how much manipulation or how much work did it take to get there? How much did they have to maybe invite extra people to kind of fill? It was a very convincing case. It looks good. But maybe if they hadn't done that, the room may not have looked, almost surely would not have looked that way. But they're trying to show people, no, we are diverse. But is it reality? Is the party really made up of the Democratic Party the same percentage of blacks, Latinos, Asians, and whites as America? Probably not. That's why they had to make a point of making it look that way instead of just inviting the party to come and, some blacks showed up, some Asians, some Hispanics, and some whites, and they were in the room. But they chose to make it look like America instead of just letting their party be their party and however it looked. Guys, I'm not a fan of trying to appear one way. They're masters at doing that. And again, it's, winsome rhetoric. It's emotion. It's so much emotion. And that's why I'm talking about fear. So now I'm going to get into a little bit about faith and also talking about that difference between politics as usual. Politics as usual, because that's also what's at stake. Guys, we've had this radical election 4 years ago where the fake news did everything possible to try to keep Trump out and not let him get in. And yet he did get in. He was not even liked by the Republican establishment. The George W. Bush and John McCain and others, did not like Donald Trump, didn't want him to get in because he's not the establishment. Yet the American people put him in, and his approval ratings were very high, and the economy was doing outstanding, and America was growing in its global esteem. The left hated what was happening so much that they rejoiced when the coronavirus hit. And we can get into whole segments about that in China, and Obama sent money over to that lab that helped make it. And I'm not even going to get into all the depths of those things. But what I'm going to say is this came at a perfect time. And then right as it was beginning to die down, the race issues hit. Again, George Floyd was not the first, sadly, by no means the first African American killed by a white cop in a very brutal or unethical, inappropriate way. It's horrible what happened to him. But, as I've said before, the media picks what they focus on. Unjust things have happened in days since to white people, to other black people, to Hispanic. Unjust things happen almost every day. But the media picks what they're going to focus on and what they're going to raise up and how much attention they're going to put on it. So again, there's an agenda out there to turn. So here's my thought. The left hated what was going on so much that they said the only way to get Trump out of office is to try to prove that he is inept at governing and he's just a bumblehead or nitwit or strong-headed and just unable to govern, and therefore people are going to long for politics as usual. That's why they picked Joe Biden, 47 years in Washington, the consummate politician in so many ways. And they're like, no one would normally want that. People didn't want the politician, the lifelong politician, Hillary Clinton. They didn't want her 4 years ago. But if we can wreck the economy and shake things up and exploit the racial tensions and the coronavirus and the economy and all this perfect storm, make Trump look like he can't govern, you'll suddenly long for the past. You'll want to go back to status quo. You'll want to go back to life as usual under politicians who said one thing and did another, did double speak, made all kinds of promises, didn't deliver. Trump's some of his greatest strengths, he actually says what he's thinking and feeling, and then he delivers. And the left had no answer for that. They had no answer, so they had to just wreck what he had delivered and what he had built. So, here's where I get into faith. I actually believe Trump loves this country, Trump and Pence. I believe they are pro-American, and I believe they are doggedly committed to turning things around, righting the wrongs, bettering American lives, standing up for American interests abroad. They're the only ones in recent history to pull back away from some of these globalist accords or some of these other trade agreements. I mean, Trump has done radical things. For 20, 30 years, and actually a lot longer, the American presidency and America has been just heading toward this globalist, one world government and climate accords and trade agreements. I mean, that's kind of the unofficial job, or actually, I believe it's really part of the official job of the American president, is to merge America into trading blocs and climate accords and all these things that are steamrolling us and speeding us toward one world state, one world government. It's all prophesied in Scripture. So it really didn't matter that much whether Bush got in or Obama or Clinton, and you can even look further back. There was a consistency of negotiating trade agreements to bring the world closer together and signing into almost all climate accords because we need to preserve the environment. Now, again, I'm for the environment, but I'm not for climate alarmism, which is looking to take over the economy, take over the world, and take over the governments and merge us into a one world state. I'm not for that. And that's what the Green New Deal and these things are for. But like I said, all these presidents were kind of just generally going along or doggedly going along with these things until Trump. And he said, no, that's not good for America. We're not doing it. And yet, emissions act still went down under him. He's proving it can be done a better way, preserving our freedom. The left hates it. A lot in the world governing communities don't like it because it's putting a wrench. America's still the most powerful country on earth, the most influential country on earth. And him putting a wrench in that is stirring up our neighbors. The only reason the left has to bring this up about, oh, Trump is not liked or other countries don't esteem us anymore, that's actually not overall true, but it's part of the leftist media and way of making you fearful about America. No, that's what I'm really getting at here. Before COVID hit, ask yourself, what was life like? Just rewind, December, January, February. What was life like? Was America a horrible place? Horribly racist, so oppressive, no opportunity, hated in the world community, an abuser, a horrible thing, no good with the environment? No! America was doing great. She's a great country. And ask yourself this even today. If you didn't watch TV, if you just asked yourself, how's my life? How are things going? What do I really think about America? Is she a horrible country? Is she no good? Does everyone hate us? Would you actually conclude that on your own? Or because the media is telling you to think that way? This is where I want to call you into faith. Will you actually believe what you see or what you hear from Donald Trump? That he actually cares about America. He wants to do what's right for her, not for the globalist governments. And he actually believes in the goodness of the economy and free will of people to right wrongs and do things and rise up in good ways, make positive change. I know we saw that in the last 3 years. Why is it suddenly different now? Why is it suddenly invalidated now? And even with the coronavirus, as I told you, he practices what he preaches. He didn't hide out from it. He didn't run in fear. He still held his rallies. He still moved forward with his life. And yes, eventually, 6 months in, it did catch him, but he's quickly recovered. The man is so strong and so robust because he's fighting for America. He didn't need to run for president. He's got money in the bank. He's got plenty of success already. But he's been talking about this for decades because he actually cares. Will you have any faith in that? Will you actually look at the man, what he's saying, not simply caught up in emotion, folks? Will you actually examine the claims? Will you examine the economy? Will you examine yourself? What do you deep down believe? Is America a horrible place that needs radical change? Or is she a good country that's doing well and yes, of course, needs some corrections even with law enforcement and justice? Yes, we need a level of reform. But I'm not giving into the chaos narrative. I'm not giving into the fear narrative. I'm not giving into this negativity narrative that's just trying to exploit you. And when you give up your freedom, you're going to regret it. And that brings me to my last point, which is failure. It would be a failure, folks, to make decisions. That's actually one of the first rules of good decision making. Don't make decisions when you're angry. Don't make decisions when your emotions are at like a 9 or a 10, because you're not thinking clearly. You're not actually able to discern the facts. Even in these really disturbing cases like Breonna Taylor or George Floyd or, even back, I'll say it, the Rodney King affair, way back in the day. Again, when you just watch this much of the video or get this much of the facts, it looks horrible, and it is horrible. I'm not happy that any of those people died or were beaten or anything. That I'm not rejoicing that at all. But in order to make good decisions, we have to look at the whole testimony. That's why we have courts. That's why the courts, and they don't always get it right, but it's still the best system of justice that we have. They look at the whole testimony, what happened before, during, and after the incident, what factors may have influenced the police to do the things they did. There's always two sides to a matter. And so, yeah, I grieve the losses, and I grieve even the systemic or patterns that have erupted where African Americans many times are treated unfairly or less fairly in the court system. I'm not happy with that, and I'm not okay with that. But how are we to respond? And why is the emotions being, cropped up to this new level? Why are certain things like the political movement BLM being thrown in our faces? And that's being called justice. I mean, who isn't for Black lives? Most 99% of Americans, I believe, are for Black lives. The very extreme, horrible racists, horrible. I detest it. Horrible. But 99% of Americans, I think, are like, yeah, I support Black lives. And that's why even so many Americans are out there like, yeah, I went to the rally, or yeah, I'd march in that, without knowing that it's a political movement, BLM, that's actually behind that. So how can you say no to Black lives? You shouldn't. I support Black lives 100%. But I don't support the political movement behind it. I don't support what's being done to raise your fear factor and raise your adrenaline and raise your anger. That's even why there's the rush toward early voting. Get you hopped up, get you right now in the crisis. Guys, that's not the right time to make a decision. This is an orchestrated campaign to get Trump out of office. Failure is giving into that. Failure is giving up hope. That's actually what the left would like, nothing more. Yeah, no, there's no way out. It's not going to get better until you get him out and get us in. And then you're stuck with them and their controlling agenda, packing the court agenda, taking over the economy and actually wrecking it for many people and controlling so many more things, guys. It's not the way. It's not what freedom is about. Failure is also buying the left's rhetoric that Trump is a disruptor and that Joe Biden is the change agent. No, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are a return to the status quo, which wasn't that great in the first place, which is why Trump got put into office. Trump is the actual change agent, and they fear his change more than anything. Hear me on this. Don't get it wrong. Don't allow them to flip the rhetoric. Trump is the true change agent. He's changing America back toward what America was meant to be. The left hates it. They're enraged. They want nothing more than to stop these changes, to the fact that they would actually pack the court because they can't stand the changes that Justice Amy Coney Barrett, if and when she's approved, would help make, to Roe v. Wade, abortion, to many other things. This leftist agenda is being wrecked by Donald Trump. He is actually the change agent. He's changing the direction that Obama and Biden set in their first 8 years and that has been set overall for America for many years. They're changing it back. Trump is changing America for the better, and yet they call him a disruptor because he's disrupting the liberal plans to destroy this nation, to destroy the foundations of what this nation is and redefine America into something that no longer looks, tastes, or feels like America. Do you really want that for your future? Guys, don't give in to fear. Have some faith. Don't let this election and this country become a failure. 2020 is your year. This is your time. Make your voice heard. Please get out and vote. Vote your conscience. Vote what is actually best for America, not the version of America that the biased liberal media wants you to believe. Don't vote based on your emotions. Don't give in to fear. Have faith. And have faith even in the real results that are seen and were seen for the first 3 years of the Trump presidency. It's real. They can't be taken away. Don't do something in a moment of anger you're going to regret for many moments thereafter. If you like this video, please give it a like or a share, add a comment below. It's a joy to have you on this channel, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.